I think that most of us who do video editing prefer to work with a large monitor. It means, of course, we can see much more on our screen. For these tutorials, we do record them at a relatively small size, and as a consequence, it might mean that whilst you are watching through this course, things might seem a little bit cramped. As I say, I prefer to work with a larger monitor, and you can see it here. I'll just zoom in. And once I do zoom in, then at this tutorial size, well, you can see that in view, I can see my Explorer and my trimmer window just to the right. Now, what I'm going to do in this tutorial is look at how we can adapt what's known as a workspace so that we can take advantage of whatever our monitor size is. And whilst we're doing this, I'm going to show you a new feature in terms of what we can do when we create a new docked panel. Now, before we get to that stage, let me just go through what we've got here. As you can see, I've got my Explorer tab open, but if I want to open up a different panel, then by clicking on any of these tabs down here, as we've seen before, allows me to instantly flick over to that particular panel. For example, if I click on the Project Media tab, then of course my Project Media panel opens up, and there you'll see all the files, all these movie files, that so far I've brought into my project, this Gun 1 project, and they're being displayed as thumbnails. For the past few versions of Vegas, we've been able to do this, and just in case you can't see thumbnails, well, remember, just by clicking on this drop-down arrow here, then you'll see I can flick between three different options: List, Details, and, as it is at the moment, Thumbnail. Now, if I return to my Explorer panel and then click on here, then you'll now see an option, Thumbnails, that we have seen before during this course, but we've not always had it within Vegas Pro. Just before we look at it once more, let me click on Details, which now means, as we've seen earlier in this course, we not only just see the file name, we get these extra details as well. If you want to resize these columns, by the way, just roll your mouse over that small vertical dividing line, left click, and then just drag either to the left or to the right to resize that particular column. And if you can't see all the information in these columns, then just use the horizontal scroll bar right down at the bottom, or you could enlarge the panel. Right, as I say, something fairly new then. By clicking on here once more, well, I'll choose Thumbnails, and there you go. You'll now see a thumbnail view of all the separate video files that I've got on my system in this particular video folder. They're not necessarily part of my project yet. This is just the Sony Vegas Explorer that allows me to search my hard drive, looking for any particular files that I do want to bring into my project. And if I move down to the bottom of my screen, then you'll see, as we brought in the last tutorial, here are those two files that I used, one as a subclip and one as a file that I brought into my timeline and trimmed it on the timeline. Right, let's go back up to the top left of our screen, because what I want to do is do what I said a few moments ago, in that I'm going to create a floating dock, and within my floating dock I'm going to place some of these panels. Now, I'm showing you this because, well, partially, some of it is new in the way that we can dock certain panels within our floating dock, but also so that you can see that even if you've got limited space on your monitor, then you can have a floating dock to help maximize what you have actually got. For example, with my Explorer panel here, if I click on these gripper dots and drag out to the right, then you can see that this is now not docked where it was, it's now floating above our user interface. Now I'm just going to resize it so that we can see it better. Okay, now at the moment, of course, it's just this panel, this Explorer panel, but if I want to combine it with other panels, maybe I want to combine it with my trimmer window, for example. Let me just move this down a bit. Then by grabbing the gripper here, left click, then I can drop it within this Explorer panel to create this new docked floating area. Okay, so we've now got them side by side, my Explorer on the left and my trimmer on the right. I'll just enlarge it a little bit more and resize so that they're almost identical in terms of size. Now you'll notice up here where it said Explorer a few moments ago, when we just had the Explorer tab, the Explorer panel floating around, well, now that's been removed because we've now got a dock. And here, as you can see, it says Vegas Pro Dock, because this is a docked combination of two panels at the moment. We'll add another one in a second. What I'll do is I'll choose my Project Media panel. Okay, so this one down here. Now by coming up to the Project Media gripper, left click, and then drag on top of my Vegas Pro dock here, where I want it to be positioned. And there you go, it's now been docked below my Explorer panel. So not only do we get a vertical division within this dock, now with Vegas Pro 12 we can add horizontal divisions as well. And of course you would resize this to suit your monitor space. Which means if you are predominantly working in a certain area on the main user interface, then you can move this Vegas Pro dock to a different position, slightly out of your eyesight. And of course all these panels do work in the same way as they did before. For example, if I left click on this thumbnail here, I can drag it over to my trimmer window, and it works exactly the same way. I can flick through it wherever I want to be. If I want to create a subclip, I'm not going to, I'm just showing you that this is still available as a function. Okay, so that's how we create a dock then, made up of multiple panels. Now, if you want to save this dock so that you can use it across different projects, or indeed if you want to revert back to how we started, then the way to do it is to come to your third option here, View, on your menu bar, roll down to the third option there, Window Layouts, and then fly out to the right. And if you want to save this so that you can use it later on a different project, then click on Save Layout As. I'm not going to bother, I'm going to go back to where I was, which is the default layout, so I'll click on Default Layout. Consequently, as expected, we now go back to how we started. Okay, easy enough then. That's what we can do when we want to create a new panel workspace. Not just with the normal user interface and move things around, but also if we want to include a floating dock. Okay, right, we'll finish up here then for this tutorial, and in fact we'll finish up for this section.